tell you, I have paid the price.
You know, Kratos, I wasn't always like this. A monster. I was once the most prized craftsman in all of Olympus. Zeus rewarded me with my marriage to the beautiful Aphrodite. My mother, Hera, bragged of my talent.
When we think of gods in Greek mythology, we think of these chiseled, aesthetically pleasing figures, and the same can be said for the goddesses. They always seem to have this air of beauty and desirableness about them. But when we think of the god Hephaestus, beauty is one of the last things that comes to mind, and the circumstances surrounding his birth are a bit strange to say the least. Hephaestus is considered to be the child of Zeus and the goddess Hera, but in some stories, Hera was jealous that Zeus had given birth to Athena without her assistance. Seeking revenge, Hera then gave birth to Hephaestus without the aid of Zeus. Because of this solo birth, Hephaestus was not like the other gods and goddesses of the Greek pantheon. They were known for their beauty, and Hephaestus was born ugly and deformed. Had he been a mortal man, then this wouldn't be an issue, but as Hephaestus was a god, his mother Hera was ashamed of what she had created. She rejected her child, throwing him off Mount Olympus. Despite the long and dangerous fall, Hephaestus eventually landed in the sea near the island of Lemnos. He would eventually be rescued by a sea goddess named Thetis, who took him to the island of Lemnos where he grew up, never really knowing where he was from. In the stories where Hephaestus had a more conventional birth, it wasn't until he was older that he was thrown off Mount Olympus by Zeus, when he attempted to protect his mother from Zeus's rage. The fall from Mount Olympus did not kill Hephaestus, but instead he was crippled by the fall, causing the limp that Hephaestus was often depicted as having. Growing up on the island of Lemnos, Hephaestus was raised by the local Thracian tribe, where they taught him to become a great craftsman. He would eventually construct his first ever forge on the island, where he began making trinkets and jewellery. Naturally, as he grew older, he became more curious as to the identity of his parents, and when he had found out of his origins and what had happened to him, he began to plot his revenge. Hephaestus' skills with his forge became so renowned that word even travelled to Mount Olympus, and he crafted a great golden throne that would be transported to the gods as a gift. When his mother Hera sat upon the throne, she became engulfed by the throne and she was unable to move. With Hera's powers being valued so highly, this did cause some concern amongst the gods. Hephaestus was summoned several times to Mount Olympus by Zeus to release his mother, but he remained on the island of Lemnos, ignoring all communication with his father. It was the god Dionysus that would eventually bring Hephaestus to Mount Olympus, but this wasn't by choice or persuasion. Dionysus succeeded in making Hephaestus extremely intoxicated and bringing him to Mount Olympus on the back of a mule. When Hephaestus sobered up, Zeus essentially bribed him. If he released his mother, then he would be given a prominent role on Mount Olympus. From then on, Hephaestus would be regarded as the god of the forge, sculpting, metalwork, fire, and volcanoes. He would also now be seen as the blacksmith of the gods, where he would craft all their weapons and accessories. He crafted many things at the request of the other gods, but one of Hephaestus' most well-known creations was that of the first female human, Pandora, which he created at the behest of Zeus. Hephaestus also provided Zeus with a solution to his problem regarding the goddess Aphrodite, who was considered the most desirable of all the goddesses on Olympus. Zeus was facing a possible war between gods for her hand in marriage. As part of their agreement, Zeus promised Aphrodite to Hephaestus, who accepted in disbelief that a goddess as beautiful as Aphrodite would ever be his wife. Needless to say, the prospect of being married to Hephaestus was not one that appealed to Aphrodite, and it wasn't long before her affections were focused elsewhere. Aphrodite soon took a liking to the god of war Ares, but their relationship did not go unnoticed. the titan of the sun Helios witnessed the two several times. He then informed Hephaestus of his wife's actions. Hephaestus, now infuriated by the actions of his wife, began creating a contraption that would catch her and Ares in the act. The next time the two lovers would meet, they triggered the trap that was set by Hephaestus mid-lovemaking, and they were ensnared by an unbreakable golden net. Hephaestus dragged both Aphrodite and Ares back to the other gods, assuming that they would be punished. But instead the other gods were more amused in the way that Aphrodite and Ares had been caught by Hephaestus. The two lovers were eventually released unpunished, and not long after, Aphrodite fell pregnant with the goddess Harmonia. The father was indeed Ares, and Aphrodite and Hephaestus soon went their separate ways. But like many divorces, it wasn't exactly a civil process. Hephaestus exacted some revenge on Aphrodite when he crafted a cursed necklace, the Necklace of Harmonia, which brought pain and suffering to all those who possessed the necklace. Hephaestus and Aphrodite bore no children, but it's said the god was believed to have many mortal lovers, one located near each of his numerous forges. This led to Hephaestus having several children of note, including King Olympus, Ardalus the inventor, and Palimonius, one of the Argonauts. But perhaps his most well-known son was Erechonius, the man who would one day become the king of Athens. The circumstances surrounding his birth are also quite strange. Hephaestus attempted to court the goddess Athena, but when she rejected his advances, he tried to force himself upon the goddess. In the process, he ejaculated on her thigh. Athena brushed the semen away, but when the semen fell onto the earth, Gaia, she became pregnant, and born from the earth was Erechonius, the future king of Athens. It's believed that Hephaestus' main forge was located in Mount Olympus, with his secondary forge back on Lemnos. These subsequent forges were built beneath each one of the ancient world's volcanoes. Volcanic activity was often explained as Hephaestus at work. This does somewhat explain him being referred to as Vulcan in Roman mythology. Hephaestus' prized creation was undoubtedly his automatons. They allowed living objects and creations to be brought to life. He used them to even make his own handmaidens. Even the furniture in the palaces of Mount Olympus was able to pack itself away because of the automatons of Hephaestus. Hephaestus was one of the most creative gods in Greek mythology, creating nearly everything you associate with the Olympians, from the helmet and sandals of Hermes to the arrows of Artemis and Eros. He also had a hand in building many of the great palaces of the mortal kings. He was closely linked with the story of Prometheus, when he stole fire from Mount Olympus to give to man. The fire was taken from the forge of Hephaestus. Hephaestus then took part in the punishment of man and Prometheus, when he crafted Pandora and bound Prometheus to the Caucasus Mountains with chains he had forged. Before looking into Hephaestus in any detail, I always considered him to be a minor deity. What caught me by surprise was how many stories that he was involved in, and how reliant the other gods were on Hephaestus. Anything that the gods needed was crafted by Hephaestus, and so many of the iconic weapons and trinkets used by gods and Greek heroes were made by the god of the forge. Hephaestus' story has everything you could want and expect: hardship, tragedy, lust, and revenge. If there's one thing we've learnt today, it's don't anger Hephaestus, because he will exact revenge. He's a resourceful and extremely clever god, but like most great creators, he can also be eccentric at times. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about Hephaestus. If you're anything like me, then your opinion about the god has definitely changed.